The year is 2018. I'm in the midst of my Danganronpa phase. Yeah, remember when I used Danganronpa sprites in every one of my fucking videos? You may have forgotten, and I truly envy you for that. But anyway, during the latter half of that year, a few buddies of mine were starting to have a hyperfixation on the Yakuza series, drifting away from the Danganronpa craze that was dominating our friend group, but now wanting to get into different things and abandon my attachment to drawings. I very pathetically disregarded Yakuza, even after playing some of Zero. I said shit like the game was trash just to piss off the guys and to keep myself from getting into the series. Why? Because I was a fucking bitchless loser. But then something incredible happened. I grew up. That aside though, I figured that after all these years of shitting on the Yakuza franchise, even after I had moved on from Danganronpa, it'd be high time to finally give the series a fair chance by playing the only entry I own, Yakuza 0. Now, I apologize to any Yakuza purists who are getting pissed at me for starting the series here instead of the original game on the PlayStation 2, or even Kiwami. Hey, Alan told me to start the series with 0, so get mad at him with anything. Jokes aside though, let's finally get into it to see if I was wrong about Yakuza, or if my pathetic preconceived notions actually have some ground. So before I get into the nitty-gritty of the game, I want to take a moment to talk about establishing tone. You know, something Sega isn't really good at. To give you a good understanding of what exactly I'm talking about here, and what I mean by tone, let's take a step back from Yakuza 0 for a moment, and talk about one of my favorite all-time video games, Super Mario Galaxy. If you take a bunch of Mario fans and you ask them which main series has the best story, I'm pretty sure most of them would say Galaxy. Now why would that be? Every Mario game has the same goddamn cookie cutter plot. What makes this one so special? Well, dear viewer, this is where the idea of tone comes in. Yes, while Galaxy does have the same plot as every other Mario game, it has a much more serious tone to it. How it accomplishes this is by allowing the game to be much grander in scale and scope, by fully taking advantage of the ominous yet endearing nature of space, and as a result, makes the game thematically richer than any Mario game that came before or after it. Examples being giving the game a grand epic score, a wider array of different shots in the cutscenes, letting the player soak in the severity of the situation at hand, and by actually taking Bowser seriously. Like, comparing the final scenes of Galaxy and New Super Mario Bros. Wii is fucking night and day. Hell, even comparing Galaxy to its own sequel, the difference in tone is extremely noticeable. Galaxy 2 clearly doesn't want to take itself as seriously as its predecessor by giving Bowser much goofier dialogue and having him far out of frame. So you see, despite having the same story as every other game in the series, the more serious tone allowed Galaxy to feel completely fresh in comparison to every other Mario game. And guess what? Most Mario fans consider Galaxy to be the best game in the whole franchise. Now why in the hell am I talking about tone? Well, you see, the story in Yakuza 0 takes itself very seriously, right? The first chapter in the game has the main character leave the people he trusted and considered his family for so long due to a conspiracy involving being framed for a murder he didn't commit, and a fucking parking lot, combined with some of the most hateable and deplorable cunts I've ever seen in a video game. The characters' grizzled expressions, the excellent voice acting, the compelling themes of betrayal, blackmail, and family all culminate in a story that's very captivating, but also has a very serious yet solemn tone. Now, in that same game, you have these two kids that bully this RC racing nerd for being bitchless. When I was 16, I didn't comprehend the appeal of Yakuza, but now I completely understand. I have been enlightened. Seeing such a serious character like Kiryu going through some deep shit in the story, only for him to bust out some goofy ass dance moves, is not only hilarious, but incredibly charming. You'd think the game betraying its own tone by doing this would sabotage its more intense moments, right? Wrong! If anything, I'd say it enhances it. The game is confident enough in its storytelling for there to never be a dull moment, which makes the goofy moments that much more enjoyable. And since all of this was intentional, none of my enjoyment was ironic, all of it was genuine. If a game is able to have fun with itself, it allows it to be a much more calming, entertaining, and fun experience. Or at least for me. Now, let's actually talk about the game itself. It's very good. There are multiple aspects of Yakuza's gameplay worth talking about, but for starters, I want to talk about the combat. Now, Kiryu has 3 fighting styles you can use across the course of the game. I know there's a 4th one as well, but Yeah, I'm not doing all that. All of those 3 fighting styles are Brawler, Rush, and Mr. Beast! Rush is easily the best out of all of them. I like the heavier emphasis on speed than attack because it makes racking up crazy combos all the more satisfying. Like for example, I get to take a couple licks in when the match starts, dodge when they wind up an attack, and fucking bomb rush their bitch ass. It's so satisfying to pull off and see how fast it can take you to beat up some thugs while trying your hardest not to get hit. It's really good stuff. Beast fucking sucks. I hate Beast so much. Kiryu moves like a fucking slug and his walk cycle looks like he's holding in a shit. Brawler is a little better, especially as the game goes on, but I still prefer Rush's heavier emphasis on speed. Oh yeah, that reminds me, there's a skill tree for each and every one of the fighting styles. It's a bit unfocused with each style having you upgrade your health and attack power separately rather than having one shared health and power gauge, which is fucking dumb as fuck. And how you gotta put millions upon millions of yen into each goddamn style just to get some gay combo you will never use is so but it's fine. This is fine. But Kiryu is literally only half the story here. See, in Yakuza 0, there are 2 playable protagonists, that being a Kiryu and this funny looking guy named Majima, and I honestly wish the game was solely about him. Majima is so much more interesting, complex, and charismatic, simple as that. Like, I enjoy Kiryu enough. His resting face looks like the kind one would make when they have a fucking pole up their ass. But Majima is just an overall fantastic, fun character. I find him a lot more compelling due to him showing a multitude of different emotions and expressions during the game and how tragic his backstory is. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't played it yet, but damn. Plus, the perils he finds himself into are so incredibly intense and really makes you challenge and question the morality of not only Majima as a character, but you as a player. Using the end of chapter 4 as an example, again, I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but I was on the edge during the final scene of chapter 4. Seriously though, even though this game likes to have its goofy moments, the storytelling and characterization is incredibly strong, and I can't stress that enough. But what about how he plays? Is Majima more fun to play than? Yes he is. He's a lot faster and more fluid to control, which makes all 3 of his styles fun to play, which is something I can't say about Kiryu. There is not one style of Majima's I like more than the other. Sure, there are times where I want to play Thug more than the other styles, or there are moments where I see how a specific boss moves and attacks and I think Slugger would be the best style to fight him with. But all in all, each style is really good stacked up against each other and are really fun to use. Plus, I prefer his heat actions as opposed to Kiryu's as well. Oh yeah, I didn't talk about the heat actions. Well, that's mainly because they're kind of superfluous and underwhelming from a gameplay perspective. It's basically an automatic win button. That being said though, I do like Majima's heat actions as opposed to Kiryu's because of how more animated his movements and expressions are. But there's more to Yakuza 0's gameplay than just the combat. Like, so much fucking more, that talking about all of it in excruciating detail will literally make this a 10-hour video, so let's not. But for now, I want to talk about 2 things: the story missions and the side missions. Now, this kind of structure is nothing new for video games. Have objectives to do in the game be divided into some that are mandatory to completing it, and some that are optional, that act as fun minigames or something. It offers a nice variety of stuff to do in the game, and can add an extra layer of depth and even replayability. I briefly discussed this in my Legends Arceus video. While the story missions in that game were monotonous and repetitive, the side missions were actually really enjoyable. Now take that and fucking times that by infinity. That's Yakuza 0. Well, sort of. I want to be fair here when talking about the story missions. Story missions are a huge mixed bag of funness. Is that a real word? Fuck it, it is now. Anyway, yeah, the main missions here are incredibly mixed. One minute you're storming a Yakuza base, kicking ass left and right, culminating in a boss that's incredibly satisfying and awesome from both a thematic and gameplay standpoint, and the next you're walking around aimlessly throughout this whole city to get these dick-ass homeless men liquor, or buy this blind girl some food. On one hand, I appreciate the variety in objectives that actively encourage exploration and prevents the gameplay loop from becoming stale, but on the other, said objectives are incredibly tedious, and the game is already packed to the brim with content, with me more often than not triggering side quests by accident, so why even bother with the monotony? And I know what you Yakuza heads are gonna say, oh, that's only a few missions, the rest of the game isn't like this. Well, yeah, it kind of of is. Most of the main story missions are either fucking annoying and tedious or hilariously underwhelming. I wrote a bunch of them in my notes specifically for this segment, and I can go into detail about why they're all ass. From fetch quests to trailing missions, it's honestly rare for me when I get a main story mission that's actually fun. Even some story missions that are simply beating the shit out of people can get repetitive and tiresome with how long they drag on. Looking at the end of chapter 6 as an example. And the side missions also have their fair share of annoying moments, but at least they're rewarding because it can lead to something cool, like a shop for equipment to make your guy stronger. Speaking of Yakuza side quests, let's talk about those. The best way I could describe the side quests in Yakuza 0 are, como se dice, fucking batshit insane in the best way possible. I wrote down several of the best ones I played in my notes, so I'll briefly go over them. There's the aforementioned Virgin Toy Racer, one where you have to help Hideo Kojima direct the food commercial and kick the shit out of the guy you replaced, one where I have to annoyingly maneuver past nosy ass women to buy a kid porn.
We interrupt this program with some breaking news.
Stunts too. Digga Bell, thank you very much, guys. Great announcement. All right, awesome. Thanks, Digga.
One where I have to teach someone how to be a dominatrix. Yes, really. And my personal favorite, the cult one. You know which one I'm talking about. Where this lady asks Majima to track down her missing daughter, and you stumble across this cult where you not only find the lady's daughter, but also find out the leader of the cult wants to her, so you kick the ever-loving shit out of him. This is where the game peaked for me. Usually in video games, I never bother with side missions because I prefer to just do the main story objectives because I have a ton of games I want to play and I want to get through them as fast as possible so I can go on to the next one. But with Yakuza 0, so many of the side missions are enjoyable, both in the gameplay objectives and how fucking absurd and nonsensical the situations are. While modern Sony games pride themselves on big fancy graphics and character-driven stories and whatnot, they all too often forget the one fundamental aspect that every video game should be: fun. Yakuza 0 is fun. How I spent my time in every play session of Yakuza 0 is that 80% of my time is spent on the side content and 20% on the story related stuff, mainly because there's a lot more variety and fun stuff to do with the abundance of side content than the main story objectives. That's just a fact. And notice how I said side content, not just side quests. Why is that? Because Yakuza 0 has the greatest assortment of minigames I have ever seen and played in a video game yet. There's karaoke, dancing, bowling, toy racing, t-ball, fishing, and watching softcore porn. And those are just the ones off the top of my head. You can even play some old school Sega arcade games like Space Harrier and Fantasy Zone. As I'm writing this segment in my script, I am currently fucking 72 hours into the game and I haven't even beaten it yet. Hell, I don't even think I'm halfway done with it. All my time has gone into doing side quests and minigames because of how fun they are and how many of them they are. 100%ing this game must be a fucking pain in the ass, but there's so much to do here that I genuinely feel like this game is endless at times. I feel like there's more meat to this game than any fucking open world game I've played, and that's why fuck you, Bethesda. Jokes aside though, I really am happy I decided to replay and revisit this game, as it was way better than I ever anticipated. Granted, I didn't fall head over heels in love with it like all my friends did, but I still had a nice time playing it. Hell, I'd even say this game made me a Yakuza fan, and that I'd be willing to play other games in the series if they're as good as this one. I give Yakuza 0 0 out of 10, and you should definitely give it a shot if you haven't. Also, yes, this game is better than the entire Danganronpa franchise.